Okay, you're good to go?
Okay. I'd like to welcome you all to the Advisory Design Panel meeting, Thursday, January 20th, 2022, held remotely. I'd like to first acknowledge that this meeting is being held on traditional Squamish territory. Secondly, I'll just do a quick adoption of this agenda. Can I have someone to first that in a second? So Brent and Sarah, thank you. Third, I'll just go through a quick roll call of who's here at the moment. So I see Brent, got Jamie, Jordan, Sarah. And then for the second part, we'll have Carlos, Luke, Julian, and did I miss anyone else from the panel there? No. Okay, next item, the minutes. Was there any comments on regarding the minutes? Did anyone have any amendments? Questions? No. Okay, can I have someone to adopt those minutes, please? Carlos to second, Jamie. Perfect, minutes are adopted. Okay, new business arising. We'll go to the second item first. So that is BP 0000581, Works 1 Oceanfront. If Jesse Fletcher is here, I'll hand it over to Jesse Fletcher, planner.
Great. Hi, thank you. So good afternoon, Advisory Design Panel. My name is Jesse Fletcher, planner with the district. Here to briefly introduce first item now up at Advisory Design Panel today. So we received a development permit for what will be the third development permit received on the Oceanfront for a new commercial building that features at-grade commercial space and 3 stories of office space. The proposed building is in the primary employment area of the Oceanfront and Zone Comprehensive Development Zone 69, and is within Block B. So this proposed development is subject to Development Permit Area 12, and within that, sub-areas 6.7, 6.8, and 6.16. Those guidelines are attached to your report today as Schedule A. This project has not previously been presented to Advisory Design Panel. One fun quirk about this project is that it is awaiting a set of amendments to the Comprehensive Development 69 zone. Those are awaiting approval by the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, and once they're adopted, the project is expected to align with the zoning. So if you look at the data tables within the architectural package, you'll see 3 different tables, and if you reference the third one, that's one we're anticipating that it will, those are the bylaw conditions that it will meet. So today we're seeking ADB feedback on the site plan, architectural design, building materials and exterior finish, and landscape plan. And with that, I'll hand it over to the Department Architects, Andreas and Jane.
Yeah, sorry, Jesse, can I just say, and sorry, applicants, one more thing. Could I just have it minuted that Carlos, Luke, and Julian are recusing themselves from this portion of the meeting? And then one second thing is we've got a couple of applicants here, so if you can keep your presentation to around 15 minutes, that'd be really helpful. Okay, thank you.
Perhaps IT, if we can get the presenter ball to Andreas and Jane, and they'll be able to share their screen.
Andreas Kaminsky. Okay. Yeah, sorry, we're having trouble with our screen share. It's not really allowing us to
share a screen? Do we need special permission?
Yeah, there should be like a, I think it's blue or green little circle ball in the corner of your screen. That means that you have the power to share. And then if IT or Carly, you can help give them some instructions on how to do it. It's been a while since I've shared my screen.
It might just be permissions on our end.
Yeah, it seems to be fine though.
Can you, what happens when you? Okay. What about this one?
Sorry, which one?
I don't know what that does.
That's where we go.
Oh, sorry. I don't know what's going on here. I can just start talking and then see if this catches up with us. But, you know, one of the things that we wanted to just start talking about was the context plan, because I know a lot of people might not be familiar with the plans for the Oceanfront. So we're really excited about this project. It's located, I think you guys all know the Oceanfront Squamish. It's just a spectacular site with a public park planned on the end of it. The peninsula is divided up into these really distinct neighborhoods. And the ones on the oceanfront are called the Village. And we're in a neighborhood called the Works. So we're the kind of at the edge of 3 different neighborhoods. And so it's kind of like we consider like this corner transitional project. So it kind of switches from being the commercial area, the shopping district of the oceanfront, to the residential area. And we're kind of on the corner of what will become employment space neighborhood. We're still having trouble here. Julian, do you have our drawings?
Yeah, I do actually. Let me see if this works. Hold on.
Maybe you can share.
Yeah, just give me a minute. Andreas emailed them to me.
Yeah, we kind of changed the order up a little bit.
Okay, I have them here. See if it works for me. Share.
IT, can we pass the presenter ball to Julian Patterson?
Do you want to see what Carlos has to say? Is yours working, Julian?
I just have to do some sort of security privacy thing in
Yeah,
system
we're
preferences.
security message.
Open system preferences.
Do you have this option?
I've done what it's asked me to do.
It's blocked out.
Yeah, we're not.
Does Jesse have the package?
I have the one that was submitted with ADP, so
I could email you this right away, right
yeah,
now.
why don't you do that and then I'll share my screen.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
this is basically saying we've got to quit WebEx and come back into it. That's what it's saying to me.
Let's not do that. We'll bear some action.
Yeah, it's probably not a good idea, is it?
Wait and try again tomorrow.
Heather, while you're doing that, I'll just have it noted that Kareem's joined the meeting as a panelist. Hi, Kareem.
Okay, Jesse, it's on the way. So we should.
I think it's some Uber Mac security thing.
Okay, I'm just refreshing my email. Hopefully it shows up.
You might want to send it to Carlos too, just in case he needs to try. Julian, you might need to email your drawings to Jesse too.
Yeah, good idea.
Can you email them to Carlos too? Just forward the same email. Oh,
Good to go?
people see that now? Is that you, Jesse?
It's Jesse.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
awesome. Well, let's start flying through these slides then. This is basically just to give you guys some context. I think everyone knows how awesome it is down there at Oceanfront Squamish. Works One is kind of located midpoint on the in the master plan there. So we're pretty close to the public park, but we're kind of sitting in the future, we'll be surrounded on all sides by buildings, but that'll take a little while to fill out.
So immediately to the south is a residential building, and then the park.
Next slide.
Right.
We're gonna fly.
Yeah.
Okay,
You're
so
cut off.
yeah, I'm the timekeeper. So this is a site plan. We're just going to orient you a little bit here. So south is
Left.
to the left, so that's where the park will be. We're only like a block or so away from that. The other features in the site plan, we just wanted to point out that the whole block is occupied by an underground parkade. So the plan is for there to be ample parking for the development, and we meet the bylaw requirements for parking. And then again, as I mentioned, eventually we're going to be surrounded on all sides by future development.
And the parking entrance is kind of that brown.
Yeah, sort of
Yep.
midpoint. We have the center two-way lane in the mid block, and that's how you access, the service lane, some of the back of house functions like the waste room, and then the ramp to the underground parkade. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just to blow up at a level 1, I think the features here are pretty self-explanatory. We have a through and through lobby, so you can access the upper floors from either the back or the front of the building. We have that mid-block central entry off of the main road and lots of commercial space at this level.
Yeah, and the waste room and end of trip facilities are on this end as well, on the back side of the building.
Yeah.
Which is into the parking.
Okay, next slide. Trying to make up for last time. This is a typical floor plate. So like as in any office building where it's designed just to be multi-purpose, we can subdivide it into multiple tenancies. There's also possibility of just being occupied by a single tenant. So it's meant to accommodate lots of different office sizes and businesses. Mostly locals, I think. Okay, next slide. Thank you, Jesse. Do you want to speak to this one?
Sure. This is building section. Obviously, it shows the parkade, which is underground. It's one of the few areas in town where you can do a completely underground parkade, which we're really happy about. And then the commercial retail on level 1, and then 3 stories of office up above. This structure is a mass timber structure, which we're really excited about. It's a really sustainable product, and we think it'll be a really nice addition to Squamish. Beautiful office space.
So working with the structural engineer, we also had to add in a whole bunch of these. You'll see it scattered about, the steel cross braces for seismic resistance. So that became an integral part of the structure and our design as well. Next slide, please. So here we are. This is our office building from sort of the
Southeast corner.
southeast corner. So basically, we decided for this building type, because it's an office building and quite functional in form, we thought it was really important to express sort of the structure of the building. So wherever we could, we're trying to create openings so that we can see the structural steel as well as the CLT, which forms, you know, the main structure of the building. And aside from that, you can kind of see the mid-block along the main road, an opening there for the entrance to the main lobby, as well as some additional overhangs on the south side, where we're trying to mitigate the sun exposure on the set.
This is Energy Go's step 3 building, so we spent a lot of time, and there's a lot of consideration in how to achieve those goals. So so unlike a lot of other office buildings, which would be entirely glass, we've reduced the glass quite a bit. Have small punched openings for the majority of the east and west elevations. And on the south elevation, we've got large overhangs to shade the large amounts of glass that we have there in the summer, but also are sized to allow winter sunlight to come in and get some heat gain from that. Sunshades are on the east and west elevations that deal with sun from those angles.
The other thing we were thinking about for the oceanfront projects is, you know, like elsewhere in Squamish, you know, where we have so much exposure to sun and to rain, and especially to the wind here on the oceanfront. We just liked the idea that, you know, there are some materials that really get battered by that type of exposure and how they weather and things like that over time. And we thought that's why we introduced the zinc shingle, because that's a material that is meant to patina and weather over time, and then it stabilizes. So we like the idea that the weather and the conditions is allowed to have a little bit of an imprint on the appearance of this building. Anything else? Next slide, please. It's just a little more insight into the material choices that we made here. You know, the whole oceanfront is basically industrial land. So we wanted this particular project, because it's in the works in neighborhood, to have that sort of robustness of that metal and metal siding and things like that. But, you know, obviously wood is an appropriate choice for Squamish as well. So we wanted it to have that identity, mostly in areas where it's protected and won't weather as much.
Yeah, so that we see wood largely on the soffits and some of the indentation areas of the building. And a lot of the glass, our large pieces of glass will be fritted glass, a bird safe fritted glass, to reduce bird strikes.
I think next slide. These are just some other views of the same building, obviously from different angles. So in the first one, that's sort of the view you'll first see as you're driving down the main road towards the park. So we wanted that window to have some degree of interest to that corner, so it feels a little more public, because it will be there for probably a little while before other buildings come into it. And then again, if you look at our streetscape, we did want to expose that steel structure as much as possible. Like this particular building is not meant to be precious, but to kind of have this robust industrial type of appearance.
So where the all of the wood columns, as they come through from above, they become steel columns at the street level, which is much more robust in our wet climate. In the bottom left image, that shows a typical condition around the building, where we have a continuous soffit providing overhead rain protection and defining some sidewalk space as well on the building, along the streetscape.
Yeah, next slide. I think that might be, yeah, so just again, a few different views. We worked on the lobby a little bit just to simplify it, and then also create that sort of like a protected atrium space over the lobby that we've earmarked for art. So there's like a little glass enclosure around this space above the entry there.
Yeah, so that provides a kind of a display box or jewel box for sculptural pieces or some public art that's yet to be determined.
Yeah, and I think that concludes the architectural portion of the presentation.
Jesse, I've sent you our landscape drawings. I don't know if you've got them yet.
Okay, yeah, I just
In the ether somewhere.
yes. Okay.
I think that was fine, right?
That's the, I think you got that strokes. So.
Yes, and introducing our landscape architect, Julian.
Thanks, Jane. Hopefully we'll have some drawings at some point I can talk to. So I just kind of start. Yeah.
So
I'm
just pulling them up. Did you want me to start on L1 then? Because you've got.
Yeah, please. Yeah. So very much in line with the Oceanfront landscape design guidelines, which are aimed at really creating a unique sense of place. So certain street trees are required on certain streets and certain plant palettes, again, on certain streets, but the streetscape is fairly self-explanatory. One of the things we really got kind of interested in with this idea of creating a unique sense of place, and it's one of the things that I don't know if you guys, Andreas and Jane, deliberately omitted the fish scale idea, the fish scale notion, but I'm going to mention it. So we started talking about this idea of what is unique about this area and how can we really interpret that in a design sense. So one of the things that we started talking about was this idea of herring and herring scales, and fish scales, and you'll see on the building there that there are these kind of almost fish scale like quite metallic forms from the zinc cladding. We also kind of took that same metaphor and turned it onto the ground plane. So if you, Jesse, I don't know if you can zoom in on that drawing at all? On the south side there, you'll see a series of kind of raised planters essentially. So these functionally protect the column locations where they hit the ground, but they're also kind of derived from that idea of these sort of interlocking fish scales. And we chose the colors that we actually pulled colors off images of herring skin that we would powder coat those planters in. And similarly, we've got these very large bench seats that kind of float through the space. So they're really a juxtaposition to the direct connection between the architecture and the landscape, which you see in that kind of extension of the grid pattern from the columns. So that's essentially a pigment dyed concrete in the sidewalk, and then juxtaposing that, we've got these planters and bench seats that float through it, functionally protecting those column locations where they hit the ground, stopping people walking into the columns, but also providing that kind of sense of visual interest on the streetscape and the kind of pedestrian scale. On the actual ground plane, in addition, we've got inset recycled glass panels that again kind of are reflective of that sort of sheen of fish scale, if you will. So it's kind of an abstract metaphor, but I think it does help create that kind of sense of a unique identity. So if we could just move to the north, I'll just talk briefly about the idea of the surface parking that is kind of disguised in that Vuna type tradition. So so this is surface parking level. It's predominantly a concrete surface, and we're really trying to find ways that this really doesn't feel like a surface parking lot. It's more a kind of has a civic quality to the space. So we introduced the kind of the notion of putting a patterning onto that concrete surface using pigment dyeing and exposed aggregate, and also taking away the typically delineated parking bays by using stainless steel road studs instead that have reflectors on either side. So someone driving into the space would see the end of the parking bays, and then each of those parking bays is delineated by one of these road studs with kind of intermittent planters. And you also see the kind of extension of that grid pattern again that pulls out from the building. So, you know, we're trying to tie in what we're doing on the sidewalks again with this notion of creating this unique sense of space, the fish scales, and to try and make this feel much more of a kind of interesting civic space as opposed to just the back door of a, you know, of a functional semi-industrial type building. So I'm going to leave it there, open it up for questions because I know we're short time. Yeah, thanks very much.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'll start with questions first from Kareem.
So thank you for the presentation. I actually have no questions.
Okay, super efficient. Can I go to Brent?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I have a question about the circulation, I guess, for bikes. So great to see the end-of-trip facility on the ground floor. Just wondering, I don't see in the plan drawing any bike lanes. Just wondering what the network is connecting to the building.
Sorry, Jesse, can we go to the site plan or level 1 plan? Yes, so you're talking about on the street circulation?
Yeah, just like access from the rest. Just wondering, yeah, like how people will get to and from those end-of-trip facilities.
Yeah, so yeah, the end-of-trip facility would be accessed then off of the laneway, the parking area in the back.
But there is a bike lane.
Yeah, there's
Um,
bike lane, yeah.
Do any of the fronting roads have bike lanes?
They do, yeah.
They do.
Yeah, so there is a whole, and I haven't seen it in a while, but Carlos, you might be able to speak to it, but there's a whole plan for pedestrian oriented paths through as well as a bike route that circulates. There's one that wraps the perimeter like around close to the water, and then there's faster routes that go down Main Road, and then alternate routes that they're kind of scattered all throughout the master plan.
If you look at the site plan, actually, Jesse, you can see the kind of the main spine that comes down through the oceanfront.
The quick answer is that, Brent, is that there is a 3-meter bi-directional separated bike path located on the main road on the opposite side of the street.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
And then surrounding the kind of site, so to the top of page, there are 1.5-meter unidirectional bike lanes. And so the intent is that when you get onto these kind of these east-west streets, the traffic is only really going to be serving those buildings, so it'll be a lot lower. So you can come off a separated bike lane into a shared lane situation and then enter these buildings.
Gotcha. And then another kind of specific question that is not really architectural, but wondering what the curb lines, there's some funky looking.
Yeah, why they're so funny?
Yeah, they're kind of funny because a couple of things. We have a bus stop slated for the front of the building at the basically at the bottom of the drawing there, but the big wide sweeping corners are as a result of fire truck access.
Okay.
And making sure.
Sorry, jump in one more time, Andreas. It gets really funky because within this works neighborhood, we do envision there being some light industrial users there in the long term, and so we have built to accommodate a WB15 route within that works area, and that, as I'm sure you know, takes out big chunks of sidewalk. So so we're not allowed to cross center line. We're not allowed to really roll over curb. It's completely designed so it's operating within that lane, which makes for some funnier looking intersections.
Gotcha. Yeah, no further questions for me. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Brent. Could I go to Jamie, please?
Just one question about the material used for the vertical solar shades that are on the east and west facades beside the windows.
Yeah, those will be a pre-finished aluminum plate, basically.
Yeah, we're thinking to match the color of whatever's in the field. So the windows in the zinc will match that zinc color. And then on the top floor where we switch to a darker shade of metal, those will be the dark metal to match.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, that's all for me.
Cool, thanks, Jamie. Could I go to Jordan, please?
Sure, yeah, thank you for the presentation. A couple questions. First, how is stormwater management considered on the sidewalk and streetscape?
I'm sorry, go on, Carlos.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, Andres.
Julian.
So basically the sidewalks will pitch into those effectively planted bioswales. That's what they are on either side. So that's where the surface water treatment is going on the sidewalks. Insofar as the parkade, the Brunner, I suspect we'll end up with a tanking system there, just because we don't, everything is surface mounted essentially there. So everything's above that grade line. It's an impervious surface. So I think that's the only way that we can really deal with the surface water runoff in that respect.
I'll just add something to that, and I'm only jumping in here because it is a site-wide. We do have site-wide stormwater that kind of contemplates the entirety of the oceanfront and deals with all of the oceanfront's stormwater and treatment through 3 different interception points, and so it gets treated before it's sent back out into the ocean. So all of this is calculated to take that storm load.
Thank you. And one more question. So maybe the staff as well, but do the design guidelines allow for native planting?
They do, yeah.
Okay, and so are there any native plants in your plant list? I didn't notice any, but I wanted to confirm that.
We've got native adaptive, I think. So they're pretty much everything is part of the, we've got, Echinacea, Pepperia in there. So we're trying to keep it interesting, but also without it being completely, fully native. But yeah, they're all part of the approved list essentially.
Okay, no other questions. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. I'll go to Sarah next, please.
Hello, everyone. Just a couple questions. I just wanted to verify, because it's difficult to see, there is an accessible washroom at the trip facilities.
Yes.
And there's 2 surface accessible parking spots in the Woofner area. Okay, perfect. Cool. That's all my questions. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. And my questions, I appreciate the shading on the sides. I was just wondering why there's no shading on the south-facing wall, aside from the kind of deep sort of set reveals.
Yeah, really the only way that you can actually achieve efficient shading on the south is to do the deep overhangs. So that's the majority of that elevation is protected by those deeper overhangs. And on the other, the windows that are to the west of that, the solar will have to be controlled by interior blinds, basically.
Okay. Perfect. That was my only question. So then we'll go back around for comments, please. Can I go back to, unless there are any other questions?
Sorry, I have one more question. Yeah, sorry, David.
Yeah.
Question about the end of trip facility. Just wondering if it accommodates any oversized bikes, cargo bikes. Those have been considered.
Oversized bikes?
Like a cargo bike or a long bike?
Yeah, I think we've accommodated for 6-foot long kind of bike parking spaces. So that longer than that hasn't really been considered.
Okay, or like wider, I guess, like size of doors, there's, yeah, things that I don't, there's guidelines on bike arcades, just, yeah, something to check.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can look at adaptive mountain bikes. I think they're about 34, 36 inches wide.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll be able to accommodate that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Any further questions from the panel? No? Okay, we'll go to comments then, please. Kareem?
It's very brief. I like the aesthetic that's being presented. I like the idea of the shingles. The sort of use of wood without being too much wood. I would have liked a little more in terms of solar shading and those shading devices on the sides. I think they're at this point they're just gestural. They're not probably doing a lot of heavy lifting at all. I would have liked to see them emphasize more and maybe tie into somehow to the steel structure idea that you're trying to show. I see the steel bracing, you know, in a sort of a couple of views, they show it, but I think there would have been, if you really wanted to make a stronger, you know, emphasize the structural elements more, there could have been more effort there. To show really that bracing and really make it pop out and make it an important part of the facade. Other than that, I'm you know, congrats on this. It looks good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kareem. Brent?
Yeah, I'll echo Kareem's comments. I think the building looks great. I really like the finish and the materials, and I kind of like the play as Julian was bringing up on, you know, thinking about fish's scales. I think that not too bold that it kind of is obnoxious, but kind of fun at the same time. Yeah, a comment again about the curbs. I think that this is more for the district than for you guys, but I think it's worth pushing back on crossing center lines and with large vehicles. I think that, you know, we're trading off pedestrian space that can be really focused on people for large vehicles that are sometimes making those turns. The space is safe enough for a bike to ride shared in traffic, then, you know, that truck should be moving slow, and you don't really want to be accommodating a fast, kind of not super careful turn anyways. And then, yeah, I think that like what's being done with the parking area on the surface level is also a nice use of, you know, something that is often kind of a forgotten space. And so I think that there's potential there for even looking at the corner commercial unit, if there's spillover into that, and kind of activate that space a little bit, something more than parking. I could see some potential there. So yeah, I think it's a nice building and nice work. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Jamie?
Yeah, similar comments from me. I think it's great to see a mass timber structure. An office building is a particularly good use of it. I appreciate the sort of integrated approach to passive shading. I think it's good to see a building like this taking overheating and orientation seriously. I think it's got good pedestrian overhangs and a kind of arcade along the east side in particular, which will be helpful for retail spill out and cafe seating and covering bike racks, things like that. I think the zinc shingles are appropriate material. I think they're a good durable material that will age well. I agree with Brent. I think it's a bit of a shame that the public space at the corners is kind of compromised so much by vehicle turning radii, but I understand the reasons behind it, and yeah, I think it's a good scheme overall.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. Jordan?
Sure. Yeah, so I appreciate the kind of comprehensive stormwater management strategy that's here. I like the use of the generous bioswales. I also like the fish scale concept. I do think it would benefit from a little bit more variation in like the size of them, the distribution, even the height of some of the planters, and yeah, and even carrying it up the side streets as well. There's a bit of a gap between where the Waterfront happens and the front street. I think the kind of charcoal paving bands, like provided the design guidelines allow for it, you could play with the interval of those to similarly add a little bit more variation to the ground plane. And lastly, I would encourage you to add some additional native planting to the plant palette, especially given the kind of waterfront context. I think it's skewing a little bit more heavily to the urban ornamental palette than maybe something that would be a little bit more appropriate to this spot. But overall, like I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the concept, and yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Jordan. Sarah?
Once again, Jane and Andreas, you've done a great job. Love this. I really like the texture throughout with the tiles and then the wood surfacing underneath. I think the zinc is going to be really interesting to see the patina on it. Yeah, overall, I mean, I think that you've really considered the building all the way around, and from all sides, from a pedestrian standpoint, it's accessible, and you know, it's going to be a nice space to hang out when you're having lunch, if you're working in that building, or if you're just walking by, or use of the commercial space. So yeah, well done, and keep on the good work.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, my comments, I'd agree with the panel. I definitely think the zinc shingles are appropriate. Really nice texture there. Maybe encouraged a tiny bit more shading on even just the upper floor south windows that are quite exposed. I'm sitting in a downtown building with a south facing window with 6% shades, and I should have really sunglasses on right now, so it does get pretty intense. Really happy to see a CLT building. I think it's a great use. Very happy to see the end of trip facilities integrated into it. And I think it's got a fantastic street frontage, and those deep overhangs are great. So thank you. Do we have any other last minute comments from the panel before we go to recommendation? No? Okay, so I'll read out the recommendations. A, that the advisory design panel supports the project as presented and does not need to see the project returned for further review. B, that the advisory design panel supports the project in general, would like the applicant to work with staff to revise the following recommendations. C, that the advisory panel supports the project in general and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the following recommendations and return to present the revised project to advisory panel. D, that the advisory design panel does not support the project as presented for the following reasons. Do we have any discussion or suggestions or comments? Sarah?
I would like to propose A, please.
Yeah. I would tend to agree. I think all our recommendations are largely positive. They're not, you know, we don't need to see anything back unless anyone has any other thoughts. No. Can I get someone to motion for A? Kareem, second. Jordan? Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Really nice project.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks. Okay, are we going to do a intermission or should we just keep rolling? Keep rolling? Yeah, Carlos needs to go to sleep. Okay, perfect. Let me pull up the next one. Okay, so next item of business would be DP 000575, which is the Waterfront Landing Amenity Building. And I'll hand it over to, oh, who is it? Sorry. Susan Stratis, sorry, consultant planner. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, ADP panel, and my apologies for the technical glitches. I'm just going to open with a couple of slides. So I'm hoping with a little luck, I can do this. I don't see the share button lighting up. I don't know if the IT person there can. There we are. Thank you. So I'll just quickly run through a couple of slides to discuss the context and then turn it over to BOSA's project team. The property that we're looking at today is on Waterfront Landing on the Mamcombe Blind Channel, directly across from Victoria Street. The policy designates this as mixed-use commercial in the sub-area plan and in the zoning. It is in DPA 13, the Marine Village and Public Realm in the OCP, and it's also in DPA 1 for the Marine Shoreline. In addition, there are some LDA requirements that this building contain a minimum of 100 square meters for commercial use on the ground floor and 20% of the gross floor area for commercial or amenity use that's accessible to the public. And these provisions were put in place to make sure that this building allowed for public access as well as the amenity use for the strata residents. There have been 482 residential units approved on the north half of the site. The design panel has seen these projects previously, and 2,400 square meters of commercial approved in the previous phase 3BC. The environmental approvals, I just wanted to point out, there is an environmental DP already issued for the shoreline that includes the Waterfront Park area that was issued last year. And there is a second environmental DP under review for DP 574, which includes the property we're speaking about today. And that's for the pedestrian bridge and the shoreline treatment along the village shoreline commercial area. The applicants have provided a fair bit of information about connectivity on this site, and I just wanted to point out this is the site plan, which they will go into in detail, but the blue areas I've highlighted are public land areas. This is Waterfront Park that is owned by the district, and the pedestrian bridge will be owned by the district, and Chell Road is a public road. So this property, as well as the issues within the design issues within the site, is an important connection between these public facilities. So I just wanted to point that out. And I think in our staff report, just to highlight, we're looking for ADP comments on the overall building form and character in relation to the DP guidelines, especially how the building reflects the marine industrial character described in those guidelines. Also, we're looking for input on the building interface with Waterfront Park, and there is a minor variance for parking lot landscaping, which staff are not too concerned about, but we put this on the list of the main items. So I will turn this back to the consultants who I believe are online.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Just to interject 1 second, could I just have it noted that Carlos, Luke, and Julian will be back in for this portion, and just to remind the applicant to keep their presentation to within 15 minutes, please. Thanks.
Okay, I'll say good afternoon. My name is Pablo Lepe. I'm an architect. I'm heading the design team at a department at BOSA. And our role is it's a new role, to bringing better alignment amongst our group and to make sure that we can better deliver meaningful places and spaces and buildings to all the communities that we take part in building. So our team has been working very closely with Susan over the last year and Jonas to address any concerns and issues to the siting of our building, the amenity building, and how to better integrate it with the public realm. And I'm very happy to just introduce Rob and Derek from OMB Architecture and PWL Landscape Architects, so they can walk you through all the thinking behind the building and the rationale that they've addressed. Thank you.
Thanks, Pablo. Susan, are you able to share the presentation? We haven't been able to get it to work on our end.
Oh, it's up on my screen.
It's blank for me. It's black for me. Am I just the only one?
No, it's blank at the moment, Susan.
Okay, let me just try and get back into my meeting screen here.
I was told by IT that maybe it needed to be a PowerPoint presentation. I'm not sure what your slides were, Susan.
Mine were PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And this is a PDF presentation. You can't bring up a PDF?
I can't bring up anything, unfortunately. I'm able to speak, and that's it.
Okay.
I can start waving my hands around if that helps.
The previous applicant had a PDF, so
yeah,
maybe if you stop sharing, Susan, and then try and share again, it might.
All right, let me just see if I can get the share happening again. Jonas, I don't know if you're there, but I did forward that presentation to you in case it needs to be brought up at the district end.
Yes, I have it. If IT could pass me the presenter ball, then I can try sharing my screen.
Has that worked?
Okay, let me try to put it on.
There we are.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Pablo. Thanks, Susan, and thanks, Jonas, for the assistance. I also just want to thank all the panel members for the opportunity to present our project. As Pablo said, I'm Rob Grant, principal at Office of McFarland Bigger, architects for the Amenity building. I'm going to be talking about the building design and the rationale, and then after me, Derek Lee from PWL is going to be talking about the site and landscape design rationale.
Sorry, I'm just trying to shut my stuff off.
Okay. As described in the reports, the Amenity building is located at the center of the larger waterfront community, which has been under development by BOSA for quite some time, in the past few years. Our building is acting as a key amenity to the surrounding Stratis. It helps create an important public focal point with its interface to the channel to the west, the new Waterfront Park to the north, the Village Plaza to the south, excuse me, and the foot of the future pedestrian bridge connecting to downtown. Jonas, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
So on the site, our building is justified towards the water's edge on the west, that gray box there. On the east of our site, we've located the surface parking adjacent to Channel Road, and it's laid out around an existing pump station. The private outdoor facilities for the stratas are also located on the east side of the building, and those include an outdoor pool, a hot tub, poolside seating, and then it's there's fencing and planting in a small one-story accessory building that provides garbage and recycling that acts as a screen between the outdoor amenities and the townhouses across the lane to the east. If you go to the next slide. So from the start of the project, we've really strived to ensure the amenity building contributes to the larger development. We started this when there was really nothing on site. And we've tried to make sure that it emphasizes its position as a focal point for the surrounding community and also starts to act as a beacon for the new neighborhood from across the channel with the new pedestrian bridge. We've explored how marine industrial character, which is heavily embedded in the sub-area plan and the DPA guidelines, could inform our approach to the overall design of the building. So in our exploration, we've looked both at kind of local precedents of historical and contemporary marine industrial architecture around Squamish, and looked a bit further abroad in terms of the kind of the broader region on the west coast of BC. We think that like our interpretation, marine industrial, it adheres to a simple, strong aesthetic with a focus on the raw functionality of the elements. It's the use and the functional needs and occupation of the spaces within and adjacent to the building that informs the building design. And so what we tried to kind of distill it down to was the massing and how it's defined by the arrangements and the spatial needs of the interior and the exterior program. The roof form, which often in a marine industrial setting is a major contributor to the building character. Roofs tend to be simple, large forms. They're often a result of long span structures in order to kind of have those open floor spaces for canneries, net lofts, and those kind of program elements. And they just allow that flexibility to change over time in terms of the uses in the building. Within the overall mass of the building, the solid and the void, they're located to support the function in the program. Those are the drivers. They're about creating a direct physical connection to the ground or to the water, providing access to light, creating protected exterior spaces through a void in the larger mass, providing privacy and security through solid, and then bringing visibility to the activity that's occurring inside for different uses. I think another aspect that we see as being unique in the marine context for industrial buildings is that they're often built over water, resting on piles with the rest of the mass held up above the water line. And this results in the majority of the building mass being kind of raised up or suspended in the air. Materials are robust. They're expressing honesty to the scale and the texture of how that building was built, changed over time. And often we believe that color is an inherent aspect of the material that's used. Wood, galvanized steel, concrete, glass, those are the things that are treated as materials for these kind of buildings. If you go to the next slide, Jonas. So when we first started work on the project 4 or 5 years ago, the site was just starting its remediation. On the site, there were 2 remaining buildings from its industrial past. Those are the 2 photos on the bottom. The massings we see are simple. The original building form was straightforward. And some of these, there were additions that were made, and really they were just economical means to increase floor area, covered space. The opening is based on the need for access to daylight, security to kind of observe what's going on outside. The roof lines, relatively singular in form, longer spans for the one on the right, which is the more industrial building. And then the materiality is really representative of how it was built. The building color is simple, and it actually contrasts with the surrounding, kind of diverse surroundings of the wood and all the activities that would have been going on around it. And then openings are often delineated, as you see here, with something that acts as a trim, or there's separation between the background material. So that's kind of what we've taken as our interpretation of marine industrial, and definitely we've had lots of conversations exploring that further. If you go to the next slide. So just stepping back to talk about the program and the layout of the building. As Susan said, it's primarily a private amenity for the surrounding strata residents, with a portion being used for public use that we've located at the ground floor. So this plan north is to the right. The majority of the public uses, they're shown in the teal color, are on the left, which is onto the village plaza, access from Channel Road, where it kind of meets our site, and then onto the waterfront on the channel on the top of the drawing. These spaces include up to 3 CRUs. And then we've also got public washrooms located off the plaza on the south side, left-hand side of the drawing, and 2 on the north side, smaller ones that are accessed for public park users. The CRUs are fully glazed out onto the public realm and onto the outdoor covered areas to the south. Our remaining program on the ground floor is a double height half-size gymnasium in yellow, and then the internal amenities for the strata residents, which includes kind of event rooms, change rooms, those things. We've located those private amenity uses away from the more public areas. So they're located on the east, onto the pool and towards the townhouses to the east. The upper mass of the second floor overhangs the ground floor, providing continuous cover on all 4 sides of the building. which you can see in there with a slightly dashed line. So if you go to the next slide. So the second floor includes the remaining private amenity spaces, including fitness facilities and some more event rooms. And then you see the upper volume of the gymnasium on the right-hand side. The event rooms, they face onto, the ones that face onto the Village Plaza to the south and onto the waterfront to the west, have large covered outdoor decks. These primarily just a way to bring that activity that's up on the second floor out to the face and have a bit more of a public presence and help animate the building. And also give us an opportunity to carve into the mass of the building by creating these covered areas outdoors. And solar shading to the south and to the west. The northeast corner, that white square, is where we've got our rooftop mechanical equipment, which we've kept down below the roof line. It's actually at the floor of the level of the second floor. And we've wrapped a screen around it on the north side onto the park. And that screen continues around to the east side to provide some solar protection for those fitness rooms on the east side, bottom of the page. The gymnasium, top right, is glazed onto the park on the north side with translucent glazing, just to help provide some additional indirect daylighting, as well as helping for looking to ways to help animate that elevation onto the park side in terms of activities that are going inside the gymnasium. Now, if you go to the next slide. So yeah, this is the roof plan. Here, I think at the bottom right, you kind of see a little axo where it kind of shows the two main volumes that we've divided the building up into. The sloped roof, upper on the page, it slopes up and creates that extra volume of space above the gymnasium on the north end. And it's finished with a metal standing seam. And then the roof on the east side, we've stepped down to keep low as it gets closer to the townhouses to the east of the amenity. We've also included a green roof, a sedum roof on this lower roof to assist with some limited aspects of on-site stormwater management that we can. If you go to the next slide. So just kind of stepping back outside the building again, with the planning, we were really also considering how we could incorporate that marine industrial character into the overall design and inform some of the larger design goals of the building. So this view is from across the pedestrian bridge at the foot of Victoria Street. This shows kind of the long sloping roof on the west portion of the building, with the mass rising up towards the north above the gymnasium. I think you also see we've kept that upper mass of the second story, lifted it up off the ground, just to allow more transparency and a stronger visual connection between the CRUs and the public realm on the west and south side of the building. The deck on the upper story, you can see is carved out of that upper mass, and it provides that covered outdoor space for the event rooms year round. And then on the left, you see the double height gymnasium with the translucent glazing down at grade to provide a bit more privacy for the users, but still provide some animation for people walking by on the boardwalk. Overall cladding on the upper mass is a white sidewall shingle, and all the openings on that upper story are lined with clear finish wood panels or planks, whether it's the soffit, the walls, or the deck. If you go to the next slide. So this next rendering is from across the channel, more adjacent to the park. And this shows that upper volume of the white shingled portion and the gym at the north face with the translucent glazing, and also a potential location for some art that's being considered. To the left, you also see the screen around the mechanical equipment. It's like a C shape on the left hand of the drawing, and that's screening off the mechanical equipment. If you go to the next slide. So this view is taken from the south end of the park, the waterfront park at the north, adjacent to the townhomes. And it shows how the ground plane, which Derek is going to talk about in much more detail, we've tried to make it kind of a continuous transition from park to our site and not create these thresholds between public and private, and more bring that public aspect right up to the face of the building. And we've created some more outdoor activities that happen at the north end. It also provides access to the public washrooms that are just beside that red bouldering wall, kids bouldering wall elevation. The washrooms are part of the larger lower floor mass that on this side is solid, clad in galvanized steel panels, and that wraps around to the east side around the change rooms and faces onto the pool. If you go to the next slide. Thanks. So this view would be coming in from Channel Road. Here you see the larger overhangs of that upper story above the village plaza, and the CRUs below face onto that village plaza and kind of see the pedestrian bridge off in the distance there. So on the right here, there's the multi-use path and the landscape buffer, and then behind that is the parking, and then kind of in the distance on the very right-hand side, you see the word enter. That's the entrance to the private amenities for the strata residents. And you also see on that upper mast the continuation of the use of the white shingles and that wood liner for the decks, both the soffit and the deck, the soffits below and above. So then I think the next slide, this is the last one for me. This view is from within the village plaza, just to the at the foot of the pedestrian bridge. You can see that on the left, and here you see those ground floor CRUs spilling out onto the plaza and the waterfront as well, with the overhang above to kind of create some covered space for a bit more year-round use. And you see the sloped roof of that upper mass sloping to the gym at the north, with line voids as well. So I think that's it for the building. I'm going to pass it over to Derek to talk about the landscape on the site.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, just to give you a bit of an overview. As far as the landscape goes, you know, as Robert said, we're really placed within the broader context of the Mamquam Blind Channel, and this bears a really strong relationship not only to the surrounding community fabric, but also to the waterfront park to the north. In this diagram, what we're really looking at is what's demarcated in blue is sort of dedicated areas for pedestrians along the waterfront promenade. So you can see kind of that woven sort of desire line running along the Mamquam Blind. And inboard of that and along the diagonal surrounding the site are areas that are permitted for bikes as well. So in some cases they're dedicated, such as along the waterfront promenade, but in other cases it's sort of a mixed area, like what you see in this plaza at the north end and along the diagonal connecting to the road to the street and through the plaza. So those become really multimodal kind of shared spaces. So maybe I'll go to the next slide. So in terms of the actual layout of the plan, really there's a few critical components here to describe. I'll start from kind of the south and work my way counterclockwise. So at the south, if you're approaching the site, what we're really seeing is sort of an enhancement of the streetscape, the street and boulevard. We have sort of the surface parking here, which is really 18 stalls. There will be sort of some loading service area for the pool and for the amenity building itself. What we're really looking at here is a fairly lush landscape. You know, we're looking at layers of native understory planting, Acer rubrum, we have Thuya placata, a lot of the use of vine maples to create sort of a screen through and along this diagonal. And that diagonal layered landscape is really there to provide some screening for the pool area. So the pool area here is really kind of it's a semi-private amenity, semi-public amenity for the building and for the residents. What we were looking at there was to really come up with forms that respond to the orthogonal grid set up by the building, you know, to the west. But then the detailing of the pool decking sort of erodes into more of a sort of a stone-like banding to create kind of an interesting serrated diagonal along the pool edge. We also
have, in addition to the pool, sort of a smaller hot tub area here. We have shower facilities at the end, and this sort of more generous paving around the west and the south ends of the pool would accommodate some open lounging and seating in there. As we kind of move into the upper north end of the site, we do have this plaza, so that's this rather large opening to accommodate activities of sorts, programmed or unprogrammed. We have sort of an array of seating along its edges, a bit of a stepping down to kind of a lower pedestrian promenade along the water's edge, and that would link beyond the park. So this is really out of beyond the boundaries of the site, but worth mentioning. But as we move towards the building from the plaza, flanking the plaza, we have this sort of outdoor rec room, if you will. And what we have are sort of these islands of planting that would actually be defined by low bouldering walls, which provide certainly a public amenity. So this is all accessible to the public, I'm going to add. And then also we have some outdoor foosball tables there as well. So this becomes a bit of a sort of a all ages play area, play and adventure area. As we begin to move towards the west, towards the Mamcombe line, this is where we have the dedicated bikeway wrapping more closely to the building along the west side. And so that allows cyclists to move along the building's edge perimeter towards the plaza in the southerly direction. And then there's a bit of a decision point at that southeasternly section to allow cyclists to go over the bridge or to carry on. Well, there'll be future extensions of this promenade to the south as this project builds out. And we also have in more of sort of an angled formation, sort of more of an ambling kind of walkway for pedestrians. And that would be flanked by these three middle areas of planting, which would be rain gardens. So, that will obviously take a lot of the runoff, particularly from the bikeway. And on the west side of those rain gardens, we would have some very heavy timber decking. And so we're looking at some folded details for that decking that create these very sculptural elements that really speak to kind of the industrial character of and history of Squamish, with the use of heavy timber, heavy kind of milled timber that, milling was a big part of the history of this site. And then, to really reinforce kind of the industrial marine character of the site, we are developing some guardrail details which are heavily galvanized. They have a very industrial form, lots of plate metal, gusseted posts and that sort of effect. But we also wanted to infuse this sort of very geometrical industrial kind of pedestrian and cyclist promenade with a real kind of naturalized array of planting. So I talked about the rain gardens, but we also see some natural grasses and vegetation, shore pines that really pick up on the kind of the foreshore kind of environment that you might expect on a very exposed site, particularly with the shore pines. Rounding the southeast corner is southwest corner, as Rob described, we have in plan form the patio area. So that's for the outdoor seating and dining, as you can see there. In the plaza itself, we have a bosque of trees. So we have right now, as proposed, are Acer rubrum trees in silvocels in there as well. The paving we want to have is fairly linear and simple. We see these as sort of a very contemporary expression of jointed score lines of concrete paneling with some darker concrete banding that you can see that creates a sense of movement and directionality and sort of in line with the geometry of the architecture. Next slide.
Sorry, Derek, can I just interject 1 second? I know it's a big application, but we're kind of at 25 minutes now. So could we move through the slides as you talk, maybe?
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Three
Thank
more
you.
minutes.
Yeah.
So this gives you a bit of a profile of the plaza in the first section. You can see the profile of the promenade in section B. Section C shows kind of that interface of the planting screening up against the pool area. Next slide. More slides. This is looking to the east, to the west rather, along the plaza. This is the upper left-hand corner. This gives you a sense of the screening. So the type of fencing that we have around the pool, which would be sort of a diagonal sort of plate metal that provides filtered views and partial screening, but layered with the planting would create a more full screening effect with the section of the pool shown below. And then the final few slides here, if you move on, are just a palette of the materials that we're looking at. So again, we're looking at some galvanized railing details, some folded seating for heavy timber seating. You get a sense of the banding that we're considering using it within the paving, which would be a simple scoring, and general character of planting. And I think that's the final slide. That's it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I always hate to rush applicants because I know it's a lot of work.
No problem. There's a lot.
15 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll go to questions. If I can start with Julian first.
Thanks, Howard. Just a quick question for the architect. White shingles. You mentioned white shingles. What are they actually made of?
Fiber cement shingles.
Fiber cement. Okay, thanks. And question for landscape architect. You mentioned the pool was a semi-private amenity. Is it communal, or how does it work?
A semi-private meaning exclusive for the residents of the community, right?
So communal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And was there any consideration given to the kind of this is more of a question for both architects and landscape. Was there any consideration given to pre-industrial cultural landscape in terms of the driver for the design?
Yeah, as at least in the landscape, really the critical components that we were looking at were the use of heavy timber that speaks to kind of the milling history of this particular site. And
so
in terms of
pre-industrial.
I'm sorry?
Pre-industrial.
Oh, pre-industrial. Yes, in terms of our planting palette, we're really erring on the side of native trees and understory planting, combined with some sort of adaptive planting as well in the palette.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it for me. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Julian. Luke?
Hi, yeah, question for Rob, I think. Thanks for the presentation. I'm just wondering if I could have a bit more information on your consideration for the shingles. You mentioned that they're fiber cement, but you also spoke to using materials in their like sort of natural state and expressing that quality. Could you basically give a bit more information on why they're white and that final color choice?
So I think there's a couple of aspects to it. I'd say from the start, trying to use a shingle product compared to wood shingles, I think is probably what you're getting at. And so the reason to go with white is that we weren't looking to go with a faux wood shingle fiber cement panel that's made to look like shingles when it's actually not. So that was kind of the choice to go with white as being maybe more attuned to what the actual fiber cement is as a material, and avoiding mimicking a wood product when it's not wood product. So that's kind of it. And then in terms of the steering away from wood shingle, had more to do with considerations for the future strata in terms of their maintenance and concerns about those issues in the future for maintenance. So looking for something that was relatively low maintenance and long lasting, which led us towards a fiber cement type shingle.
Okay, and what about considerations for color over the white? And basically in the context of the development, there seems to be various colors.
Yeah, for sure. I think the emphasis there for us, our approach was more to look at the building as a contrast to the development around there with the scale of the townhouses and the color and the variation of materials on the townhouses, and avoiding associating the amenity building with a single portion of the development, either a group of townhouses with have similar colors, so wanting to have this stand out as its own identity. And then I think also in terms of what I was trying to get across in terms of the references to the marine industrial. The aspect is kind of somewhat that approach. Often the color or the finish is a bit more of a neutral, beacon-like aspect to the material. So looking for something that's white just to make it a bit more, bit brighter at times of the year and the day, and not kind of blend into the background. That's how we ended up with white.
Okay, thanks. And would you be able to shed a bit more light onto the roof form as well? I can see how it's sort of coming from certain precedents, but it seems to be like throughout the precedents or in your ADP presentation, there's quite a significant articulation in the roof forms in those images. Whereas this is a very simple distilled form. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. I think our approach, just looking at other precedents for industrial types buildings, and what we took away from where you see a lot of variety in the roof line are often buildings that have been added to over their lifespan. But when you try and distill back to that original building or that original form, often it ends up being more of a simple structure, and then there's lean-tos, additions added on, and that kind of creates that that variety of the building. And we were steering away from taking the industrial and applying it as an aesthetic, and more looking at kind of what's the logic of the philosophy behind those original industrial buildings that set up the form originally, and not try and replicate something that's been there for 50 or 75 years and kind of impose this false history on top of it.
Okay, thanks. I think that's all I've got for now, but I might come back afterwards if that's okay.
Cool. Thanks, Luke. Carlos?
Yeah, thanks for that. I guess there's a question for Rob, and again, thank you for your presentation. Have any decisions been made on the construction type? Like, are we looking at a mass timber building? I noticed that some of the columns are translucent, and I imagine that they're not aquariums full of fish. So I'm just wondering, like,
unfortunately, no, they're not aquariums full of fish.
Yeah. What's that aspect?
Well, that would
look
be a good
like?
marine industrial reference. No, we are going with a steel structure.
Okay.
And the renderings have been updated to be more accurately reflect that.
Okay. And I noticed there are public washrooms kind of on either side of the building, which I think is wonderful. Are there agreements with the district to maintain those or to have those open? I know it is going to be a strata operated building, and so just wondering, what are the assurances that that public washroom will remain in perpetuity, available to the public?
I think that's a good question. I think I probably need to turn that over to Pablo to know exactly what the agreements are there.
Yeah, that's been, sorry. Can I get Paige to answer this question? I don't know if she can speak at this moment. Or Susan, can you speak to our agreement? And this is ongoing conversations.
Yeah, Susan here.
Yeah.
We haven't got down to the level of agreements yet, but there will definitely need to be a Section 219 covenant on, or a right-of-way agreement as a Section 219 covenant to secure a number of elements of this project. We haven't got to that stage yet, but yes, those washrooms are really important public amenities, so we'll be securing them.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And the kind of large face that faces the BAMQUAM, did you explore breaking that up at all with any additional kind of glazing, or is it important to you that that is kind of one element and it was designed as such?
Jonas, are you able to go maybe to that very first slide? I think that probably shows best the elevation. So when you mean the
To the left,
you mean
to the
this
left of the
elevation?
building there, above the kind of translucent panel.
Yep. Yeah. So I think what we've tried to do there, that's the right in line with that is where the gymnasium is, and I think we've avoided trying to create a issue where we've got a lot of overheating in that gymnasium facing west, and instead looking at providing that glazing on the north elevation where we've got a bit more north-facing light. And then I think in terms of as a composition, the majority of the building on this face is glazed, and so it felt to kind of layer on top additional glazing wasn't actually providing views onto anything, and was probably creating some environmental issues to the building and added cooling costs. Seems to be going in the wrong direction. So kind of wanted to represent that portion of the building as being a solid, as kind of reflective of the program inside, and stay true to that.
Awesome. Okay, that's all the questions from me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Carlos. Sarah?
Hi there. Let me just get to the right screen here. I just want to verify that the only way to access the pool is to go through either the men's or women's change room. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Have you considered non-binary people participating in using this area? Because right now they could use the accessible universal washrooms, either washrooms that are in a hallway, but if they have to go through these change rooms, then that's not really, being very inclusive of what their needs are. So I'm wondering how you propose to deal with that.
That's a very good point. Early on, we did talk about actually going gender neutral for all these facilities. And
yeah,
was
HCMA did.
not.
Yeah, HCMA did a really good publication on inclusive washrooms and change rooms, and it may be they need to be rejigged, and you just have like full doors from ceiling to the floor to allow everybody to use that space and get through into the pool area.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, that's on my. Oh, and the other question is about the railing system. So in the landscape drawings, there is an image on the third page, I think it is, that shows it's sort of tension wires and then a larger pole sort of at the top of the, where did it go? I can't find it now. Hang on. And I'm just wondering if that is the product that you guys are going to use.
It's actually different than that. So I think that's more of a character image, but to describe the product, what we're looking at are flat bar metal galvanized posts, kind of twinned like this. I'll use my hands. And then frames with steel grid mesh in them. What we found was that the cables on other projects tend to stretch and they require tightening up, and they become an accessibility or a safety issue, especially for young kids. So we've tried to avoid that, and that was really, I believe, through some input from the city as well.
Great. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
David, I think we're waiting on you. We're waiting on you for the next person.
Oh, sorry, my headset disconnected there. Sorry. Jordan?
Yes, thank you. Julian actually asked most of my questions and Derek answered a lot of them during the presentation. So just one general one could, this is maybe to Rob, but could you quickly describe which elements of the buildings program are accessible to the public and not simply residents of the community?
Sure, yeah. Do you want to go to that ground floor plan? Yep. So there's 4 colors on there in plan. There's the yellow for the gym, which is for the strata residences. There's the gray in the middle, which is circulation associated with those resident uses. And then there's a darker green, which is also for residents. That's the event room and the change rooms. And so what's left over is that kind of teal color. So kind of the L shape on the right and top right corner. That's the CRUs, public washrooms. And then there's 2 public washrooms on the right-hand side that face onto the park. Those teal colors are the publicly usable spaces, whether they're CRUs or public washrooms.
Okay, got it. And the pool is for residents only, I think, Derek.
The pool is the strata amenity.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Jordan. Jamie?
I had a question about the siding, but it's been kind of asked by Julian and Luke. Just wondering what the the energy performance target is for the building, and if there's any other sustainability certification being pursued?
No, there's not any other sustainability certification being pursued at this time. Right now, the step code requirement is for the CRUs is step code 3, and then the remainder of the building is step code 1.
Okay, are you done, Jamie?
Sorry, I didn't hear the end of that. The remaining,
oh, sorry.
The remainder of the building is step code?
Step code 1, sorry.
1, oh, okay. Yeah, that's it. Sorry.
And then we're just working through whether that's a blended or two distinct. We're just working through that with the district.
Okay, no, that's all from me.
Thank you. Brent?
Great, thanks for the presentation. Question about the parking lot and bike racks. Are those intended for the CRUs or for the amenity space, or both?
Do you want me to answer that, Derek? I can say that the exterior bike racks are located around the building, and those are meant for public use by anybody. And then in terms of the parking, would be a combination of people using the CRUs and so residents using the amenities. So at this point, there's no dedicated one or the other in terms of stalls for different types of users of the building.
We also have the 2 internal to the CRUs, which would be for staff. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah, there are 2 dedicated interior bike stalls just right in the middle of the plan that are for the staff of the CRUs.
Okay. And does the parking bylaw mandate, like how does amenity space work as far as this may be a question for staff more so than if there's parking requirements for an amenity space when it's typically something within a strata lot.
Susan here, I can answer that. The parking, the zoning bylaw exempts amenity space from parking requirements. And because this is an alternative to what would more traditionally be provided, say, in the underground or first floor of an apartment building, because this serves the whole development, we went through the zoning bylaw and that exemption still applies. There's no parking requirement for the amenity portions. The parking lot and the parking requirements are just related to the CRU space. That's the only part that generates parking.
Okay, thanks. And then I had a question about the bollard shown multi-use trail in front of the CRUs on the west side. Just if any other sort of design treatments were considered for slowing down bike traffic, or what the thought was behind those.
Susan, again, I may just speak to this because we're still reviewing that at a staff level. The design shows bollards and it shows rumble strips on the pavement. And we're just still reviewing that because it has to be consistent with what is happening on the pedestrian bridge. And we haven't finalized that. So I think the latest staff discussion, bollards are not a preferred way of slowing bike traffic. The rumble strips are probably preferred because bollards can be quite a barrier to some people. So I think at this point we're leaning toward having patterned pavement and rumble strips, but not using the bollards, but still under review.
Okay, thanks. That's all for me. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Brent. Kareem?
Thanks to everyone for the presentation. It's good to see you, Susan, Rob, and Derek. Is this, I don't know if this is a question for Susan, maybe. Is this the first time this comes to ADP? Okay.
Yes, that's correct. This is the first time.
Okay. Maybe because of my previous history with the project a long time ago, I thought that would have been reviewed already. or been viewed by ADP.
No.
I don't know if it's a question or comment, and if I should just leave it for the comment section. I don't really have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Cream. Just my quick questions most have been answered. Rob, did you consider any deeper overhangs at the pool frontage?
On the pool frontage?
Yeah.
Yes, we did. And right now there's a bit of an overhang there on the pool frontage, but primarily because of limits around separations of people around the pool that haven't gone through the change rooms. Like there's a small kind of event room that looks onto the pool, and there is a small outdoor deck that's separated from the remainder of the pool deck. Predominantly, we were looking to maximize the amount of deck space around the pool. Kind of was the driver. Not covered space out there besides site plan. We're kind of showing ideas around umbrellas and movable seating for that kind of cover out there.
Perfect.
And I guess maybe to also note that the pool is meant to be just one season, not 4 season.
Okay. And I maybe was a little bit confused with the question that the question that you answered from Carlos, where you were kind of justifying the more solid element on the west facing, because you said you exchanged that for glazing on the north, but I don't see any glazing on the north, and I think it's a comment from planning that that's quite a solid facade. Am I?
Do you want to be able to go to that page 16? Yeah. So so this kind of shows the both the west and north elevation. Oh yeah, that shows a bit better. So right-hand side is the volume for where the gymnasium is. That's the kind of double height volume. And down at ground level, that yellow material, you're not coming across great in terms of the resolution, is a translucent glass, and then it's that same translucent glass above and behind where that potential art is installed. So it's
Okay,
glazed,
so
but it's a translucent glass.
Okay, I thought that was solid wood on both of those elevations, and planner's comments are that that's quite a sort of solid elevation.
Yeah, so the solid would be on the left-hand side around the washrooms, and there's some mechanical on the ground floor, and then there's the screened rooftop mechanicals above that on the left-hand side.
Okay, perfect. Just to clarify, there is a sedum roof. One of the roofs is sedum.
On the flat roof on the east portion, yes.
Okay, and then last one, again, it's going back to this kind of shingles. Did you consider any kind of white metals or something like
yes,
that?
we did. Yep, we did. Yep. And I think, yeah, yes, we did.
You did. Okay, perfect. That's all my questions. Anyone else have any other questions? Luke?
Just one for me, David. Rob, you just mentioned there that the pool is one season, single season, just summertime?
Yeah, yes, sure, yeah.
What happens to it the rest of the year?
So the hot tub is 4 season. It has primarily to do with the heating implications of making it a longer use outdoor pool.
What happens to the pool when it's not being used?
It'll be closed off.
Is it drained and just kind of shows it off?
That's a very good question. I'm not 100% certain.
There's a safety fence a temporary winter fence that gets put in place between the pool and the hot tub. Whether it's drained or covered is something we need to work through.
Okay. That was it. Sorry.
Okay, anyone else? No? Okay, I'll go for comments. Reverse order this time. So Kareem, comments?
Oh, I was unmuted. I hope I wasn't making any noise. I just noticed. Thanks again to the team. My particular comment is with regards to the location of this amenity building. And I hope it's not my previous involvement a long time ago with the master plan, but Rob did mention it in the beginning that this was envisioned as a beacon and sort of you're welcoming the first thing that welcomes you as you cross from downtown, the pedestrian bridge over the Mamco Channel and arrive at Waterfront Landing. And I don't know if it's again because of if it was directed by planning or if it was a BOSA decision, but the loss of a monumental corner lantern, I found a little disappointing. I have seen a long time ago, and I don't know if I should be sharing this, but a long time ago I saw it was envisioned as a corner tower. I'm not going to get into what was inside in terms of use, but just a gestural corner treatment that signifies this bridge and signifies this community. I do not see that now. It looks like it could be, you could move this amenity building anywhere really at Waterfront Landing and it would fit perfectly. I don't see any reference to that important plaza where Waterfront Landing opens up to the water and to the downtown. I wish there was some homage to that specific location being paid. And I personally have no issues with the materials being proposed. The landscape work that has been done is great. Programming in terms of programming, in terms of I understand the complexities of the site and the way it's shaped. So I have no issues with that. My only comment is this was a great opportunity for BOSA to put a very iconic, distinguishable element, whether it's a small bell tower or signage or something, a beacon, like you said, something that goes back to lighthouses on a water's edge, something that says you've arrived at this destination. That's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kareem. Brent?
Great, thanks, David. Yeah, I'll speak to the elements that are important to me. So I think that staff's comments around not using bollards on the multi-use trail are a good comment, and that could create some additional conflicts. I think that additional bike parking in front of the CRUs and sort of ensuring that the parking spaces in the parking lot as well, sort of positioned so it's directly in front of the main access to the amenity building, but it's really not there for the amenity building. And so I think that ensuring that this feels like what the public sections of this building really need to be welcoming and warm, and in a part that community members are not sort of opposed to changes in the community. And so I think that maybe could use some additional thought. I think that using the hardy plank shingles or cement fiberglass shingles, for similarly, I understand like the maintenance cost of using real wood, but I don't think that product really screams the high quality and showcase nature that this really will be at the end of a pedestrian bridge and acting as a gateway into the Sea and Sky community, as well as sort of a major visual point for people looking at that community from the rest of Squamish. And that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Jamie?
Firstly, I'd say it's a very nice architectural drawing set. It makes it nice and easy to review, quick to navigate, and easy to get a sense of all the important elements. I do find that the sort of reference to industrial forms is appropriate. It's quite a subtle building, and I think there's there is still a sense of the kind of simplicity and the functional aesthetic, and taking less obvious cues from sort of late 19th century, early 20th century industrial heritage. So I do find the sort of design rationale is pretty convincing, I think. I think there's a strong horizontal emphasis to the building, which is kind of appropriate for something fronting sort of waterfront like that. I think there's a nice sense of scale, particularly at the CRU and the sort of balcony on the south side. I do agree somewhat with the concerns in the report about the north elevation, but I'm pretty sympathetic to the sort of programming and site constraints. So the building has a lot of fronts to it, like a lot of different conditions to address. And I think the north elevation suffers out of the four. Although there's a very good integration of the mechanical equipment into the building form. So I don't have a kind of obvious, solution of how to improve the relationship between the north facade and sort of public space around it. I do think it's a shame that real wood shingles are not a possibility. I think in terms of durability on a vertical application and maintenance, they're not, it's not like a cedar roof, but I understand there's a lot of sort of code and maintenance issues that always weigh on this. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Jordan?
So first, I think the landscape design is very well resolved and is well presented. Really high quality drawings. I appreciated the circulation analysis as well. So great work there. I think building off of what Sarah was saying in the question period, I do think inclusivity and accessibility of the project could be approved. So with the pool, could a wheelchair user access it? I agree. Inclusive and even gender neutral washrooms and change rooms should be explored. And I also think that providing some amenity to the general public as well, paid users who could use the pool or the gymnasium. I may need to defer to staff on whether that's possible in this particular context, because I don't know, but something to consider. And yeah, I think that was it.
Okay, thank you. Sarah?
Right, yeah. So based on my questions, I do think that the change rooms need to be reconfigured to be inclusive, so that everybody can use them to get all the way through. And I would go further as well with the public washrooms on either end to make sure that they have change tables, and in the accessible washrooms that those change tables are mounted at an accessible height, and that there's change tables in the other, which I'm assuming are going to be gender neutral. The single washrooms adjacent to the accessible ones should also have change tables in. The rail system, I would just be cognizant of eye heights for people of small stature or wheelchair users. And yeah, I mean, it would be nice to even preemptively kind of consider what a pool lift might look like, and even having the mounting available, so that in the future, should that be needed and somebody wants to donate to buy the pool lift, that's a possibility. So just things to consider. Otherwise, I think that the overall building I quite enjoy. I think that the north is less problematic now that I understand that it's actually glazing and not a solid wood wall. If you don't, the other thing is, if you don't reconfigure the change rooms and somebody non-binary wants to stay there and utilize a locker, there aren't any lockers that they can access either. So that really, overall, you should just reconfigure the change rooms to make them inclusive. I think in 2022, people, we can do it. That's all my questions.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah. Carlos.
Yeah, thank you. No, so I guess I kind of between the lines of the staff report, I think there's this question of what does Squamish's marine interface look like, and I think we're dealing with that across many projects, and it's a bit of an unknown. And I can see when guidelines are read, as gospel, that this building is not kind of a token approach to a historical form. It doesn't look like it was influenced by the top of those design precedents. It's more influenced by the bottom. And I think that in this location, that's actually entirely fair. If you look at our waterfront right now, it doesn't look like a Steveston. Those buildings have kind of been removed, and our Squamish waterfront is developing its own unique character, and there's a lot of buildings popping up on it. I think this kind of reflects that, and so I'm very supportive of that. It seems timeless and clean, and it's an attractive building, and I think in Squamish our biggest benefit is our surroundings, and I don't think we need our architecture necessarily to be as dramatic. It's the shot you used was perfect. Like that's what people really want to be looking at is the Chief and the surrounding mountains. Great job having a CDM roof integrated. I totally agree with the approach of not using, if you're going to use a hardy shingle, which I kind of echo some of the comments. I would love to see real wood, but this is a strata building and there is long-term maintenance concerns. So if you're going to do that, don't use a faux shingle. And frankly, when it comes to a hardy product, that shingle is probably the one I like the most by a long shot. I think the lines look quite clean. I've not seen it done with such a large volume before, and so I'm interested to see what that looks like. A little concerned that it might be too much, kind of like when you have a big volume of lap siding. But I think if you pick the right product and you spend the right time on the detailing, I think it could look great. So yeah, I'm really supportive of this project and really like the way it came together. So that's it for me.
Cool. Thank you, Carlos. Luke?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation for the whole team. Yeah, I'm just going to speak to a bit more to like that character, and I know that staff were concerned about the overall form and character is meant to provide like a marine industrial identity. I think like kind of sort of echoing what you just said there, Carlos, but also off on a bit of a tangent. It's more about defining a sense of place, really, especially in a place such as Squamish, where we're basically defining an entire new community on this side opposite downtown. And I can totally see how the architect has arrived at the form here based on the programming and the layout. It's actually quite a sensible layout, defining the commercial at that point where there will be a future bridge coming over to this area and trying to define that as the node. And it's sort of generally well orientated in that respect. However, I feel it could go a little bit further to better define a sense of place here and that arrival. And Kareem was like, to me, hit the nail on the head there, where you're talking about this sense of arrival. I don't think it necessarily needs like a big beacon or a tower, because I can see that you're probably doing that through the basketball court there, having the translucency in the space. That's going to change during the day, whether it's day or night. That area will light up, and I think that actually is a perfect spot for some public art there. And it doesn't even necessarily need backing if there's a way that you can mount that artwork, whether it is a graphic with type on there, and it's maybe a little bit more translucent, so you can kind of see the program that's happening in there. Maybe that would better connect the landscape with the space inside the building. People that's activating that space. I see on the north elevation there is a landscaping berm there, but perhaps it's about maybe bringing that down a little bit and making that facade a bit more translucent, so when people are playing games in that space, it connects them with the water because they're right on the water's edge. And it also connects people walking by that space with what's going on inside of the building. Because if you are walking down there, it is a bit of a non place. I see there are toilets and maybe some climbing walls there, but I guess that the climbing walls are probably going to be some kind of proprietary thing that's happening. And it would be nice to see actual things going on there. I think further consideration given to the primary material is a must for me on a project of this quality and where you've given so much consideration to it. Putting a hardy shingle on there and painting it white is like, it's falling quite short. I totally understand that you can't really put a combustible material on there, and I totally agree with the faux wood. It's not really got a place on this project. However, upping the quality to something more like a high density fiber cement shingle that actually has the color integral to it, that's going to be much better in the long term and doesn't require any maintenance. And it would be interesting to see that maybe considered on this project, or even further to maybe a metal shingle. And just maybe having a look at the context of the area and maybe trying to bring a bit of color into there, or trying that. It might not be the right answer, but a bit more playfulness in this might help to give that a better sense of place and be a bit more iconic. My only other comment would be, I think the north approach and having that commercial activation there. Sorry, not the north, the west, and having that approach from there is a very successful. However, coming from the development itself from east to west, there's a little bit of concern there, especially as you're coming down the road and passing that parking area. It might be worthwhile maybe giving consideration to what that parking area could be. Like maybe could it be further integrated into the streetscape and be a bit more rue neuf? I don't know, but that would be my comments. But thank you for the presentation, and I think it's a very good project.
Perfect. Thank you, Luke. Julian?
Again, thank you for the presentation. I think I'm in the Luke and Kareem camp here. So my notes say form and character. I think it's a beautiful, cool, modernist building and landscape. However, there's a few things that kind of bug me a little bit. I'd like to see a bit more of a integration of the pre-industrial cultural landscape and a narrative associated with that. I think it's a lost opportunity given the location where you're at. Your first slide in particular, I think, you see the chief looming right over you, and I think not to somehow recognize that and the narrative associated with that is a bit of a missed opportunity. It doesn't need to be in a twee faux way, but I think something that recognizes that, whether that's done in public art or in the design language of the building and the landscape, I think it needs to be integrated somehow. I'd like to see a bit more of a tighter integration between the building and landscape in terms of materiality. And I'm a little concerned about the one-season pool idea. It seems a little bit extravagant, and perhaps something that's it's a sort of thing that I see often driven by marketing departments. So I'd like to see some kind of idea as to what that could be used for, that space is used for when it's not in use as a pool, whether that's some kind of cover that you can use, or, I think it needs a little bit more thinking. I am worried about your shingles. I think white cement shingles in our environment will go green pretty quick. So I'd just like to, like that, and maybe wonder if there's an alternative product that would be a little bit more durable. But yeah, those are my comments. Thanks again.
Okay, thanks, Julian. Me. Yeah, I'm so happily conflicted about this project, and it makes me think as an architect, which kind of makes me think I love it, but I don't know if I love it yet. So that excites me a little bit. I'm very supportive of the modern shape. It reminds me a little bit of Chipperfield's American pavilion in Valencia. And I think the white for me does kind of speak to marine. It's like a modern boat, ideal. And this is turning into kind of a modern waterfront, in my opinion. I also think that the white is a kind of welcome respite from the excessive and sometimes arbitrary use of color in the surrounding townhouses and apartment buildings. So I really like that it's a little bit more neutral and kind of stands out from that background. And yeah, but I do struggle with the shingles. The shingles just seems to me to be trying to have a foot in one camp and a foot in the modern camp, and it's not really pleasing anybody. So Luke talked about a high density panel, something like a Swiss pearl or a coal. I mean, They are 10 times more expensive than hardy shingles, but I think that will define the kind of more solid volumes that you're going for. I think people will just look up at the texture of shingles and be confused as to its use. Yeah, and now that I understand that the north face is kind of more translucent, I think that will be a kind of beacon, a square lit up beacon. Yeah, I think it's going to be positively polarizing, which I like. It's a bold vision, and I think it's a very brave design, and it's not too kitsch where it's trying to, you know, pull the greens from the chief to say that it speaks to the chief. It's a very brave and great design. Thank you. Okay, does anyone have any further comments? Or can we proceed to the reading of the recommendations? No. Okay, recommendations. A, that the advisory design panel supports the project as presented. B, that the advisory design panel supports the project in general and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the following recommendations. C, that the advisory design panel supports the project in general and would like to see the applicant resolve the following recommendations and return. D, that the advisory design panel does not support the project for the following reasons. Do we have a bit of discussion? I think I'm going to guess it's going to be a little bit split.
I'd move for B.
Yeah.
I would support.
Second that.
Okay.
That kind of sounds like those who are maybe a bit more concerned about sense of entry, et cetera, would be okay with the proponent working through staff on this?
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'll move B if there's no more discussion.
Yeah. Perfect. Carlos, Brent. Do we want to kind of maybe go through a couple of recommendations, or do we think the notes are going to, well, I think the notes are going to be very confusing.
Hi, David. I was just going to add, there's a lot of comments, and it would be good if there was some recommendations to include in that motion.
Okay. This never really works when we tried to do it the last time, so maybe we could just go through my list and each of us could kind of pass up their strongest recommendation. Would that work, or do we want to have a discussion as to
let's try it? Let's try it out. Yeah, why not?
I'm the vice chair in control now, so I can do. Okay, Kareem, what would be your picked out recommendation?
Emphasize the location and / public plaza / pedestrian bridge.
Okay, perfect. And I'll just say at the end, if anyone's not heard a second one they want, we can kind of add that. Obviously, it's not one per person. Kareem, Brent?
With material, so that shingle and reconsidering that, and then getting rid of the bollards on the multi-use trail.
Okay, perfect. Jamie?
Yeah, I think it's just going to be the shingles. I can slot in behind someone else's comment on that.
Okay, 2 for the shingles. Jordan?
Accessibility and inclusivity in the landscape and in the buildings program.
Perfect, thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, mimic what Jordan just said, is that the change rooms need to be inclusive, and consideration just for change tables in the washrooms, in the public washrooms.
Okay, Carlos?
I think all these comments are great. I would just say on the shingle side, I'm okay with the color, but the TIP material and the quality material is something I definitely think is worth exploring.
Okay. Yeah, Luke?
Yeah, I think I just want to, oh, sorry, 1 second. Sorry, I just throwing some samples around in the office here.
Shingles?
Yeah, the shingles, yeah. No, I just want to say that like the white is I'm trying to just clear the comments up, that the white is actually acceptable, I think, but like, yeah, the quality of the material, consideration to the translucency of around the basketball court, and then, yeah, the screening of the parking on the east to west approach.
Okay, perfect. And Julian?
Shingles, white, good. Material, not so much. And integration of pre-industrial cultural heritage
Perfect. And I have no further comments to add.
I think that might be a winning approach there, David.
That was great, eh? Yeah, that was good. Everyone gets one recommendation.
That's it.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you to the applicant. So I think I would echo Jamie's comments. It was a very well laid out presentation, quite visually appealing to us and easy to understand. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving swiftly on. Next item of business, do we have any recommendations from council or referrals from council?
No.
Jonas, no. No correspondence. Any roundtable discussion? No. Can I have a motion to terminate, please? Oh, Brent. That always gets the most votes. Yeah, a second. I guess that was, yeah, Jordan. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks for sharing, David. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cheers, David.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.